Good evening and welcome to the City of Highland Park Zoning Board of Appeals, the meeting of Thursday, July 20th, 2023. We could get a roll call, please. Here.
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 Here. Here. Thank you. Have my colleagues had an opportunity to review the minutes from July 6th?
Indeed.
In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes as presented in the packet. Member Beck does that.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So that was a motion by Member Beck with a second by Member Trushansky to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved.
Member Yablon is abstaining now.
Okay, Member Yablon has officially abstained. Is there any business from the public other than the item that is on the agenda at Burton Avenue? Not seeing any. Old business, we have 2023-VAR-012, the property at 166 Cedar Avenue. The applicants are Andrew and Courtney Pulmutter. We have a brief update, Patrick? Okay. In that case, I will entertain a motion to continue this matter until August 3rd, 2023.
Member Beck will move to continue this to the August 3rd meeting.
May I get a second?
Member Yablon will second.
All those in favor of the continuance vote aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, it has approved by a vote of 5-0. That brings us to new business today. We have 2023 VAR-013, the property at 823 Burton Avenue. The applicant is Andrew Venamore of Mach 1 Inc. Patrick, are you ready with your presentation?
Great. So, yes, today's case is 832 Burton Avenue. Here it is located in the R6. So some background. Andrew Venmore on behalf of the owner. Courtney McBride is petitioning to create a new garage in their required rear yard. They are located in the R6 and they are also located in the small lot overlay zone. So that if you're unfamiliar, those are the particularly small lots in Highland Park, and they have different bulk requirements because they have smaller lots there. The home was built in 1925, and they're requesting two reliefs. So the required rear yard, you need 30% or less than 30% coverage, and they are exceeding that at a percentage of 53%. And the second is the location of the garage. It needs to be at least 3 feet from any property line while in the required rear yard, and they will be encroaching on the west property line and the south property line. The west property line, they're going to be 1.2 feet away from it and about half a foot away from the south property line. A little background. This is an aerial shot. There's an existing garage on the property, so they are wanting to replace that older garage and replace it with a new modern garage. And they're wanting to put it on the footprint of the existing garage, which is a little close to the property line, but that is why they're asking to encroach in those setbacks, is because it's kind of in the footprint of the existing garage. Here's another shot of the existing conditions. The red line shows the 25-foot required setback for the required rear yard. You'll notice that the structure is completely in the required rear yard. And currently, their current conditions is about 450 square foot coverage, so it's about 44%. So they're already non-compliant with code with their current condition. Now, the proposed conditions is a new garage by 22 by 20 feet. I've highlighted the two lines there of saying that it's 1.8 feet away from the west property line. It's 2.5 feet away from the southern property line. And again, you can see the red line showing the required rear yard. So the improvements are all within the required rear yard. They're not encroaching into the side yard at all. Yes, it's just those two requirements. Now, kind of taking a look at the neighborhood, two of their neighbors. So the Star is the site in question. 836 Burton came in to get a variance in 1989 for a two-car garage and got a 44% coverage. And across the street, 833 Burton in 1994 also got a detached garage in the rear yard for 44% coverage. 839 Burton was a side yard setback, but I just wanted to mention it. So in this area, there's a lot of rear yard coverage variances. Other comments, if you'll notice, there is a tree in that corner. Forestry's commented and has approved of removing that tree. It's in a precarious position and has approved the removal of it. There's been no other comments from any other department, and there hasn't been any public comments in the case. So just a refresher, you're requesting to do two things to exceed the required rear yard coverage of 30%. It's a 77% increase from the requirement. So it's going to be 53% coverage total, and to encroach from the required 3 feet from any property line in the required rear yard. Yes, so that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
One quick question.
Member Zaransky?
I may have misunderstood this. If they're building in the exact same footprint that they currently have the existing garage, and why the amount of
The garage is bigger. So,
it's not
The eight-
yeah, the
Two.
yeah, it's in the same spot. The existing garage is 18.3 feet by 18.4
it's not the
feet.
exact footprint, it's general.
It's just why it's so close is because they're just they couldn't expand the other way because it would be increasing the encroachment. So they're expanding. They're essentially just expanding it a bit 4 feet like that way. Because if you see kind of the pavement line, wrong way. They're kind of just shifting that
It's
way.
a little bigger, but it's primarily in the same spot is what I think you're trying to say.
Exactly.
Does the current garage encroach within the 3-foot setbacks that are required
Yes.
by the same amounts?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's probably what we were trying to get to.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Not seeing any?
Okay.
Member Jablon?
All right, so for the proposed garage is 20 by 22.
Mhm.
And that 22 isn't getting closer to one of those lines at all?
You
No.
want Mr. Venamore to answer that? Well, we can do that. That's fine.
Sure.
He probably is more familiar with the actual
Yeah, no worries.
placement.
Okay.
You'll please provide your name and business address for the record, please.
Certainly. My name is Andrew Venamore, Venamore, 602 Academy Drive, Northbrook, Illinois.
You hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
The
Thank
floor
you.
is yours.
Thank you kindly, Chair. So let me just perhaps go to that question, Ms. Yablong. Patrick's same footprint statement was essentially tied to south, west. Those are not front on the thing is make it a little bit regular and make parallels. Rear, that one. So those two dimensions are remaining, setback dimensions are remaining the same. Size of the structure definitely those two dimensions are what the,
Oh, there's a wireless there.
oh, yeah,
Our audiovisual gentleman downstairs has told us if you can just speak and
sure.
you can use the mouse.
So
Sorry for the interruption.
the encroachment into south and west property lines is not changing. The length of the encroachment, I guess, would, right? So I'm going from 18.3 to 20 feet on the south, and then 18.4, 22 foot on the west. So those actual setback encroachments remain exactly the same, or in fact, I mean, I guess you could probably say the one on the south is getting a little better because it was at 2.27. But otherwise, it's just extending.
I'm sorry to just,
No,
can
no,
you
no.
tell me which way is north on the diagram? Is
So it's a little skewed. North is up
that way?
towards the
Okay,
top. So when I say south, I mean
here. Okay. So the addition's happening more on the east side? then?
east, east and north.
Okay.
So it was 18 by, it was a square previously,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the square was, so I'm extending a little bit closer to the house. That 18.3 is going to 20. And then to the north, top, that 18.4 is going up to 22. So it's changing from a square to a rectangle is essentially what's happening on those same setback parameters to the south. Just stepping back a little bit, so if anybody had a chance to get out there and put their eyes on this garage, they will have noticed it's in very decrepit shape. Driven partially by the age, but equally as much by the large walnut tree that was on the previous drawing in that southwest corner of the property. That has, the roots for that tree over the past decades have really got underneath the structure. The concrete slab is cracked pretty dramatically, and that's led to a lot of sort of underground concrete damage, as well as a lot of damage to the top and sides of the structure, through the dropping of branches, etc., onto the old garage. Additionally, the front of the garage is divided. Within that 18 foot, it actually has two individual doors, so it makes it very difficult to access both of those garage bays. At only 18 foot in depth, it's pretty tight to begin with. The width is even more of a challenge, simply because that secondary bay, it's hard to access because there's a divider in the middle of those two doors. So the project we're proposing is getting us to a relatively standard depth at 20 feet. The thing we had to be reasonably cautious about, and we've chatted with the homeowners about this, is every foot I move closer to the house while giving a reasonable amount of space on the inside of the garage is going to make it a little bit more challenging to get in, right, because of the proximity to the house. So from a sort of a practical vehicular storage and floor storage standpoint, that's why we've gone to 22 foot in width, with the idea of trying to give the owners a little bit more space on the ground. It's a pretty small house. It's I think I did the numbers. It's a little under 1,500 square feet. There's not a lot of space in the house. So part of the idea behind this project is obviously replace the existing decrepit structure, make it sizable enough for two vehicles, but also provide some additional storage. The idea behind going with a single door then is most primarily to make the access into that northern garage bay a little bit more practical than what it is at the moment. So yes, we're getting a little bit closer to the house just through the nature of trying to provide a basic depth at 20 feet. But by putting in a single 16-foot door, that's going to give them a little bit more capacity to be able to maneuver into that space. I think as Patrick identified, those variation requests are making the one on the south, that 2.5, a little bit less of an issue, moving it 3 inches. I'm not changing the one on the on the back of the property. I think those are driven essentially by the fact this lot's only 40 foot wide, and the fact that the existing house built, 80 to 100 years ago is in that location there it is. It's making it very difficult to kind of come up with anything that's more practical. The variation as it relates to the lot coverage, I think I've been here a number of times before the board. It's a very onerous requirement, that 30% coverage in the rear yard. Makes, at this point what would be permitted is a 300 square foot structure back there, which obviously is not even remotely satisfactory for a 2-car garage. It's a tough one to deal with, particularly when the lot is even less than a standard sort of 50 foot wide lot. It's even worse in this case at only 40 foot in width. So I think the request that we are making, if you were out there and you saw the garage, you would realize that it really does have to come down. So the question becomes, how do we do that without imposing too many extra sort of requirements on the lot as it relates to the zoning relief? And by keeping the setbacks the same as what's there now, we've tried to not increase that non-conforming condition too much further. And the drive behind going with a slightly wider garage is to deal with some of the storage issues that a small house, is providing to the lot at the moment. So I want to present a couple of things to staff. The owners, in preparation for tonight's meeting, dropped a letter off to the direct neighbors, certainly the people that received the notice. We received green cards back from 7 of the 8 people that we were required to notify, so they all know. But they provide a letter sort of giving a little bit more of a family take on what's happening, and providing phone numbers and contact emails so that the neighbors could contact them directly. They have not received any notice back from the neighbors. The neighbor directly to the north also just provided a letter in support of the project. I'd be happy to.
Can we see this, Patrick? Could you just, thanks.
So, just for the record, this is new to the, I have that. So just for the record, these were not in the packet, right? That's fine, you can bring them, I'm just being clear.
No, they didn't.
Okay. 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 Okay, so staff will go ahead and distribute these to the board and then make them available for public inspection.
I'd be happy to answer any questions, or we'd be happy to answer any questions. Do you have any?
So when the, sorry, can I say-
Yes, Carl.
so when the board is done reviewing those, I'd like to set them somewhere for public inspection, though. You can probably notice the gallery is. Just as a matter of procedure, because
Yes.
anything that the board,
Yes.
anything that the board has access to influence their decision, public also.
What if you just read?
Do you want me to? I could do that.
That's up to you.
I will go ahead and read them then.
Read us a story, Chair.
Yes, sir. The first one is from Courtney, John, Abigail, and Millie Franzen, the applicants at 832 Burton Avenue, Highland Park, Illinois, dated July 18th, 2023. Dear neighbor, we are your neighbors, Courtney, John, Abigail, and Millie at 832 Burton Avenue. You may have noticed a sign in front of our house regarding an upcoming hearing in front of the Highland Park Zoning Board about a proposed change to our property. We are hoping to replace our old garage with a new, safer one towards the end of the summer/early fall. The new structure will use the existing footprint, but will be slightly larger to accommodate contemporary standard cars. It will also be structurally sound and straight. This will be a refreshing change. The current structure is leaning so much one of the doors no longer will open or close. Since the 1920s, when the garage was constructed, zoning guidelines have changed. That is why we need to request a variance from the zoning board to be able to use the current footprint. As part of this project, We have to remove the black walnut tree directly behind our existing garage. This will be necessary due to the fact that the roots of that tree have destroyed the current garage's cement foundation. The tree has pushed the structure, and it would be impossible to build a new one without removing this tree. We have received clearance from the city forester to remove this tree so long as we replace it with a new tree. We plan on planting some type of oak tree from the city's approved list in the opposite corner of the backyard, far enough away from the property line that the roots don't interfere with our lots. The hearing in front of the zoning board will be this Thursday, July 20th at City Hall. We appreciate your support and understanding. If you have any concerns, please feel free to reach us and discuss with us prior to Thursday. Thank you kindly, signed John Franzen and Courtney McBride. The second one, dated July 18th, 2023, from Fred Johnson at 836 Highland Park, Illinois, 60035. To the members of the Highland Park Zoning Board, my wife and I have lived at 836 Burton Avenue. This is the property immediately to the north of the petitioner's lot. We strongly support the petition for a variance on the petitioner's property. We have lived in our house since 1992. In that time, we have seen many families move in and out of our neighborhood. The petitioners are some of the best neighbors we have had. They are continually active with other families on our block. The petitioners are part of a lively, close-knit group of families. It would be a good thing for our block if Ms. McBride, Mr. Franzen, and their daughters stay in their home. Granting the variance will help them stay here, and many people on the street want them to stay. The request for a variance is reasonable. The petitioners seek to replace an increasingly decrepit garage. Eventually, the garage will be unsafe. The garage is already beginning to lean. Having an unsightly and unsafe garage does no good for anyone on our street. A new garage will improve the appearance of our neighborhood. Further, the petitioners have two daughters. I'm going to assume it says parishioners. I'm assuming they mean petitioners. And I think she got this and knew it was coming. Should not have to worry about whether or not their children will be safe around the garage. My understanding is that it will be necessary to cut down a tree in order to build the new garage. The petitioners have assured me that they will plant a replacement tree. I believe them. My wife and I have lived next to the petitioners for several years now. They are trustworthy. If the petitioners say they will plant a new tree, then they will do so. I realize that the zoning laws are necessary. Highland Park is a well-planned and attractive community. The zoning regulations help keep it that way. Granting a variance here will help keep our town looking good. Granting a variance will serve the purpose of the zoning rules. Please feel free to contact me about this matter. I'm glad to talk with you. Respectfully, Fred Johnston. It's Johnston. So those have now been written into the records. Are there any questions for the applicant's architect?
One quick question.
Please.
Are there any standards about how close, today? What would you normally want to put? No, you don't have.
Honestly,
I understand why.
minimum 20. Minimum.
How much?
And here's the issue. We've, we've been working on this year and a half or so. The first time I walked out here, to throw my hands up in disgust or anything, but we talked about that, right? It is still, I would be remiss if I didn't if we didn't provide a 20-foot deep garage. It just is not practical, right? So that was step number one. The relation in and out of that south bay, really no worries at all. Yep, that's not an issue. What's going to happen is that probably in order to get two vehicles in here, vehicle number one, hopefully the smallest one in creation, will have to go in first, right? And then the second one will be parked beside it. yeah, there's still going to be a lot of jockeying here. The big driver here was, you know, the garage is not quite about to fall down, but it's, you know, it's going to head that way in a couple of years. It has to come down. But that proximity is really darn tight. So we went back and forth on that. And Courtney knows it's going to be difficult. There's just no other real solution here. Could we build an 18-foot garage? Build. It's just not really practical to do, right? So if you're going to go ahead and go through all this trouble and actually build and spend the money on something that's new, it really makes sense to do it deep enough. I considered we talked about dropping that 1.8 foot back, but that's pretty darn tight. It's going to make it hard enough to build anyway. My overhang is going to be 6 inches on that side, so, you know, that's getting closer to the property line as well. So, yeah, what would I prefer? I prefer a minimum of 20 feet. And I would prefer that the house didn't block, you know, that 18.3 foot dimension is difficult enough, let alone the fact that the house is halfway covering the front of the garage. So this is the kind of best of a bad situation.
I know it's not popular to consider a garage.
I couldn't, if to tandemize this, you would attach it to the house.
Did you consider that?
We didn't, no.
Well, ma'am, if you could come up to the podium. If you would provide your name and address for the record.
Sure. I'm Courtney McBride at 832 Burton.
Do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
We were first-time homeowners when we bought the house, and we came from the city where we were doing street parking. And when we got the house, it's noted that the garage was as is, and we were like, "Oh my God, it's a structure! Great!" And as we've become suburbanites, we learned that it matters. So over the last several years that we've lived in the house, we've had sort of polled our neighborhood about what we should do. We looked at options with the tandem where it's right in front of each other, but then it attaches to the house and ruins the aesthetic of this cute bungalow that we own. And then we looked at replacing it with a carport, same issue with the aesthetic concern. We talked about a 1.5 car garage, but then what's the point of a $50,000 1.5 car garage, and we're even losing coverage. We got quotes from multiple builders, and many of them didn't want to work with the challenges of Highland Park and wouldn't consider even pursuing the project, which was a bit of a disappointment. And so when we landed on this, it's also, I think this is like second or third year that we've been talking about this garage. Andrew and his firm were finally the ones who came up with the best, what we hope is the best option for everyone.
Any other questions? Is there anything else you'd like to address as part of your team?
No, thank you.
I have one more thing.
Yes.
I am pleading my case to be able to not have to dig out before daycare drop-off. The second car being undercover will change our quality of life significantly, we learned last winter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Yablon?
I'm not sure who to ask this to, so you guys can choose who wants to take it. I have, just off the bat, not a problem with a 20 by 20. I need you to sell me more on that extra 2 feet.
So what's driving a lot of that, Member Yablong, is the lack of space in the bungalow in the house at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fraction over 1,400 square feet, short basement. The upstairs, calculated from a floor area standpoint, about 300 square feet. It's pretty tight up there. There's 1 or 2 dormers on the north side. But the actual sort of spatial constraints of the house is what's driving that extra 2 feet. So we're endeavoring to create some additional storage in the garage that is vastly missing in the house. That's really what the driver. So I think as I stated to begin with, this is a solution both from a vehicular standpoint as well as, a small house lack of storage standpoint.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you. I will begin. There's no one else present in City Hall. We're no longer doing Zoom, so we'll make the presumption that there's no one else that wishes to speak on this matter. I will begin with Member Trushansky.
All right. Well, it's being built on the same footprint essentially. So it's the same or substantially similar than what it is. I think all the elements have been met. There's nobody here from the public who opposes it. They said that they will replace the tree that they would take down. So at this point, unless I'm convinced otherwise, I would be in favor of it.
Thank you. Member Yablon.
I am having a little bit of a difficult time. I believe the standards have absolutely been met for a 20 by 20. I'm not sure about the 20 by 22, and I would love to be convinced by my colleague.
Okay. Member Beck.
My job. I have no problem with the 22 feet. I think they absolutely needed to make that turn. It's going to be difficult enough, even if 20 by 20, I think it'd be almost impossible. So I don't see any other practical alternatives on the same footprint. I think it's a good improvement, obviously, from what we've heard. The garage needs to be replaced, and hamstringing them by making them either make it small or a single does not seem reasonable to me, so I will vote in favor.
Thank you. Member Zaransky.
I agree. I think the standards are clearly met. I think there certainly is a hardship on this property. I think the geometry is sort of funny, but you understand that, and I'd be happy to support your application.
Thank you. I am going to agree with my colleagues. I do believe that the standards have been met. I believe that the hardship is truly the size of a lot that was, built. I believe it was predating the current zoning standards, and therefore the city has recognized the small lot overlay zone. And I think one of the reasons the board is here is to deal with difficult issues like these. Obviously, this garage predates you as far as your ownership, probably predates you as far as your lifetime or any of our lifetime. So, it wasn't anything you created. I do not believe it's going to affect, any of the other standards that we're required to meet because of where it's located. It's not going to impinge on light or anything from the other neighbors. In fact, bringing down the one tree will potentially create more light, which I always think is an interesting issue because there are those people who like their shade, but we never address that half of that standard. As far as the size of it, the fact that you aren't increasing the proximity of the garage to the two property lines, I don't have an issue with it being a 22 by 20 garage, because you're really only extending, 2 feet in one direction and 4 feet in the other direction from where it approximately from where it currently situates, as far as the length of the encroachment. So I believe the standards have been met. I don't believe that, the size of the garage is really before us because the applicant does not give us options, choose A or B. So what is before us is the 20 by 22. Hopefully, that is what you need. I do believe, I don't think when your kids are between 16 and 21, they're going to be backing out of your garage. I'm just going to go there. But yeah, I do believe that in order to make that swing, you need
They get
the
the
extra size. Yes. And with that, yes.
Can I ask staff one question?
Yes.
I just curious, Patrick and Carl, I presume the answer is no, but my question just is, does the city not have any kind of standard on garage configuration or approaches like they would on like a, non-residential use? Like in the building department and fire, does anyone have any objection to a plan like this?
I can respond.
Carl?
Want me to respond? So in the zoning code, Article 8 has the parking requirements, and they all apply to commercial and multifamily. There is a parking requirement for single family for number of spaces, but I don't think the other dimension requirements or aisle requirements apply to single family. In the building and fire code, those codes I don't know. I suspect they rely on the designers to design it effectively for their clients, but I don't know for sure what's in the building codes. But in the zoning code, no, there aren't any turning movement or aisle requirements for single family. There are, of course, for multifamily and commercial developments, but not for single family.
Thank you.
And building had no objection.
Not that I'm aware of.
They, usually, you put a porch, you had no objection to this building on that list.
They did. Then they filed for other. I have.
Thank you. Member Yabon?
Just as a follow-up question, because I might need clarification based on what some of you said. Does that additional 2 feet make it easier to get into the garage? Like to have the
Mr.
22
Veneman?
feet versus the 20 feet? Or is the 2 feet just being used for storage?
It's both. So because that because that radius is not really even a radius because it's so tight from the back corner of the house, what that will require the vehicle to do is pull in, really swing into that. So a 2-foot return, 16-foot tall, and then a 4-foot. What that will basically allow that vehicle to do is pull it in past. Normally when you have an overhead door, right, you just basically follow that door in. So your car is driven by that open. What's probably going to have to happen here, this is the 4-foot side, is the vehicle's going to have to come a really tight turn here and swing in where the nose of the vehicle's going to have to go within that 4-foot return. So having a wider return there allows that to happen, and in reverse, the same thing's going to have to happen. Actually, the reversing is going to be the tough. So the swing on the front of the car. So both cars are going to, even within that 16-foot opening, both cars are going to have to sort of shift it to the south to allow that car the ability to maneuver past the overhead door. Because it's so tight back here, that swing's become pretty important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Carl, you're raising your hand.
Sure. I would just like to come back. Members are asking the question. I just want to be thorough, partially for the benefit of Section 150.808, subparagraph B. This is an Article 8 for off-street parking and loading. It says design review. All new off-street parking and loading facilities, except those facilities that are constructed to serve lots improved exclusively with single-family residential structure, shall be reviewed pursuant to Chapter 176 for design, layout, and site conformance requirements of this chapter. So, yeah, single-family structures get a pass or an exception on the design and maintenance. There's some other sections in there that still apply to some other different parking situations, such as in the front yard, but not for this. I just wanted to come back. I wanted to be extra thorough, partially.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you for allowing me
Thank
to
you.
speak.
Sure. With that, I will ask for someone I will entertain a motion.
Making a hat trick. Member Beck will move to approve the packet as, or the petition as presented in the packet.
Thank you. For a second.
I will second Member Zaransky.
When you're ready, Patrick, we'll do a roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Patrick or Carl will follow up with you tomorrow or early next week. Thank you.
Good luck.
Good luck. That brings us to the staff report. Do we have anything this evening? Thank you.
Chair, can I make a recommendation?
Yes.
Can we get a stick or something so that they can point up on
There not used to be, and they took it away.
you could just grab one from outside off a tree.
The laser pointer?
I could maybe try and make
Hey, I would just
It's like a long ruler.
go low tech and get a stick.
is that people they don't speak into the mic. So if they do this, you won't hear them in the mic.
Sorry, may I speak there?
Yes, Carl.
The Vic, the audiovisual gentleman who works downstairs, has specifically asked that, and it's on staff. It's on staff. We need to get them to use the mouse, because what happens is they move away from the microphone, and it's impossible for people to hear who are trying to follow up with the meeting, the minute taker, or anyone just checking in on it for whatever reason, the public, if they're live streaming. And so on staff, we need to do a better job at trying to get. But there is a stick there.
That's my devil's advocate. Does the wireless mouse behind you work? Or the wireless mic?
Yes, we used that just a few meetings ago for a person who was over there. So that's always an option as well.
So they could use the microphone plus the stick and have something in each hand.
The mouse is sometimes hard to see on
Yes.
the screen.
Yes.
Well, Vic is hopefully hearing us, and perhaps he can brainstorm a solution as well. Because yeah, and the Vic actually that changed. The pointer got smaller. Maybe that's because you're logged in under your name now, and it's not my name. Vic had it actually adjusted where the pointer was actually a really much bigger hand. We have solutions.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I actually want Vic, if you're hearing me, I want to know if he can hear Patrick, because Patrick's not speaking into a microphone. He's between two, but I would be concerned. So just at some point, if Vic could just touch base to make sure that he was able to hear you, I would appreciate it.
Can I just?
Yes,
I
council member.
thank you. Just wanted to share that I shared with the chair that I did have a conversation with Corporation Counsel about how what I say at these meetings, and I'm, as I said last time, still learning the ropes, but also trying to be cautious. So I wanted to explain that. I did check with.
Okay. You want to pass the pen down.
Actually, can I?
Member Yablon.
Sorry, I'm chit-chatty tonight. I would potentially make a recommendation in terms of presentations when you're citing other variations that have been granted in the past, to at the same time remind the petitioners that we are not bound by past.
I have.
Okay, just because I
just
get.
to give a feel for like in the neighborhood what has happened, just to kind of give a context to the situation.
Yeah, no,
But I definitely have.
yeah, okay, awesome. Because no, I
And I'm sure Mr. Venamore knew.
okay,
He's here enough.
right, no, because
There's always a caveat of this has happened in the area, but every case is new, so
yeah,
no guarantee.
as long as,
Yes.
on behalf of Member Hendry.
Okay. Anything else this evening? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Member Beck will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion by member Beck with a second by member Zuransky to adjourn at 8:19 PM. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned.